¿Qué tal, amigos de Minnesota Latin Radio? Una vez más, les doy la bienvenida al programa Enterate Minnesota. Today, I have the pleasure one more time to receive Mr. Walter Hudson, who is a representative of St. Michael and the Minnesota State House. Welcome, Mr. Walter.
Thanks for having me back.
Well, I am very impressed. I've been watching your videos, following you around, and it's very impressive. You are very well spoken and very clear. You explain what is happening in Minnesota. And unfortunately, the main media doesn't cover everything they should cover. First of all, thank you again for making time for us. I know you are super busy. But I would like if you can share with us a little bit about you and an update about what's happening with the fraud.
Yeah, so this is my second year. We're halfway through the legislative session. And so far, the fraud conversation has been a frustrating tug of war, which seems like it possibly might be making some progress. So we finally heard the real version of the Office of Inspector General bill that made its way through the Senate and was voted out 60-7, broad bipartisan support, Democrat-controlled Senate last year, but for some reason was blocked by House Democrats. And they spent much of their time this session arguing against it on fairly fallacious and convoluted, in my view, premises. But they've made some amendments, they've made some changes that make them a little bit more comfortable. It still, to my knowledge, retains the law enforcement component, which is what is for House Republicans. That's the nut of it. We have to have a law enforcement component. We don't need another office to just go out there and issue a report saying, yeah, we know bad things are happening. We already know bad things are happening. We need an agency that can actually dig in, root out, and provide real accountability specifically for the state agencies and the oversight component, the administration component of this fraud. We can no longer pretend that this is only an issue of bad actors from the outside who've been taking advantage of the system. We need to provide accountability for the system itself.
And there is some changes they are going to do in the way to provide money for these agencies. They are going to, they continue providing services. So, you know, something that I was very surprised, I saw in the news, some of the people who, the people who've been accused of fraud, or that we know they commit fraud, I believe it was one person who stole more than $5 million. He restituted less than $100,000 and only have 1 year of jail. Yeah. I mean, what is that? Is that a joke?
It is a joke. And there's something going on in the judiciary and with prosecutors, particularly in the metro area, Hennepin County, Ramsey County, Minneapolis, St. Paul, where there is this seeming reluctance to treat these cases certainly as seriously as the feds have been treating them. You know, the meaningful prosecutions that we've seen have almost exclusively come from the U.S. Attorney's Office and from the federal government. And what you see happening, the pattern that I recognize, is that whenever the U.S. Attorney comes out with another batch of prosecutions or indictments, Walz and Ellison sweep in to take credit. You know, like they were the ones who spearheaded it, and they were the ones who were backing it. And it's like, well, then why is none of this stuff coming from you? Why aren't you engaging in state level prosecutions? Why aren't the local authorities involved in trying to stop this stuff? And then when people are actually within the purview, within the jurisdiction of local judiciary, this is the outcome we get, is a slap on the wrist.
It is terrible because it's kind of insulting to the public to know that someone who stole $5 million, another case stole $1 million, and they only gonna have 6 months in jail, or the other 1 year, like I just mentioned. It's just kind of like, so I can go and steal I promise you, is any person who maybe break into a house and stole, I don't know, $200 will take 2-3 years in jail,
Yeah.
at least. These people is like, it's no shame about
No.
what is happening.
No, that was very clear during the Feeding Our Future situation, which was just mind-boggling, where you had fraudsters who, before they were arrested, before they were indicted, when they were in the midst of committing these schemes, they were so brazen about it in terms of the claims that they were submitting to state agencies, impossible claims of feeding children. Like, there's no possible way you could be doing that. And then also what they were doing with the money, buying cars, buying homes, going on vacations in their own names.
Yep.
I mean, with you talk, there's shameless, and then there's truly having no shame whatsoever, and no apprehension apparently about being caught. Like, they were behaving as if what they were doing wasn't wrong, which has always raised the question in my mind, who told them it was okay? Who gave them the green light and left them with the impression that this is how we do business in the United States?
You know, the craziness, the insanity is shocking to me.
Yeah.
Because why something that is so obvious that we know is wrong, like, you know, using little children to become transgender, something that, you know, like, no, they're children, let's wait until they're adults. Or let men's be in women's sports. In the case of fraud, like, oh, just because it's persons who maybe are minorities, is nothing wrong with that. You know, like, if you do it, if you're a person of color, oh, no, I mean, they call it compassion. And, you know, and so on. It's like people in Minnesota, I think the problem in Minnesota is not only the fraud that we know exists, not only in the social services, we know it's in the education, and probably, I guarantee, also in the voting registration. I think it's the part that is not only allowed, but in a way even celebrated.
Yeah.
You know, and compensated, like a person. I can imagine stealing $5 million and go to jail just for 1 year.
Yeah.
It's like you win the lottery, right? Many people will willing to go in jail for 1 year if they're gonna give them $5 million.
Well, and that's just it. Is in a lot of cases, this money disappeared, right?
Exactly.
It's going overseas. We've all heard about the suitcases full of cash at the Minneapolis airport, and you see, I mean, just walk down the street in the middle of a lot of these neighborhoods, and you'll see foreign money exchange operations out in the open, advertised as such. What do you think they're getting? Like, where if these are poor communities that are in need, why do they need money changing operations, you know, to send money overseas? Where are they getting the money from? And that's where the whole compassion angle really breaks down.
Absolutely.
Right? Where it's like, if you're telling me that, and we know for a fact that a huge percentage of the Somalian GDP comes from remittances, right, from the United States. Well, if they have spare money to send home, then they must be doing all right. Right?
Absolutely.
Like, you're not going to send money home if you're worried about paying the rent or eating or any. But of course, we know that a outsized percentage of the folks in that population are on some form of rental assistance or food assistance, or so they're getting their needs met by the state, and then able to take this money through these programs and ship that overseas. It's completely unacceptable. And by the way, that's before we even talk about fraud. Exactly. Like, even if the system was operating 100% above board by the letter of the law, that problem would still remain of how do we have a refugee population that's been here since the 90s, the overwhelming majority of which are on some form of government assistance, and yet somehow have the spare funds to send overseas back home.
It's just ridiculous.
Yes.
It just not makes sense. You know, I saw when Governor Walz and Fidelison went, and they were on the U.S. House, right? What is the name of that? The Committee for Fraud?
It was the House Oversight Committee.
Oversight Committee. And the simple way, the way they answer the questions, just deflating over and over. And no matter how many times you can talk about the facts,
Yeah.
it's like, actually, it's like I say, it's an insult to our intelligence,
Yeah.
like just the way they answer the questions. Well, thank you so much for give us an update. What do you think is coming next with that issue?
Well, I mean, we'll see, right? So supposedly, since the drawdown of Operation Metro Surge, there are still a extra number of agents working out of Minneapolis alongside the other DHS staff, specifically looking into fraud. I'm not sure of the numbers, but it's certainly a lot more than the U.S. attorney had at hand. I mean, he came out when it was Joe Thompson in the interim role, said that he could keep 1,000 prosecutors busy, but he only has 25 in his office, and only 5 of them are working on this, right? So I believe the number is at least 100 that they have working on it now. So that's good. That will likely result in more indictments, more prosecutions, but really that's the reactive portion of dealing with this problem, right? Where
Absolutely.
After the fact, trying to hold people accountable. U.S. Attorney Joe Thompson also said that we're never going to prosecute our way out of this problem, that the problem needs to be dealt with at the policy level by legislators, by the governor, by the administration. And basically, we need to cut off the funds to these organizations that are doing things this way. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean cutting off services to people who actually need them. What it does mean, in my view, is that we're going to have to completely restructure how those services are administered in order to ensure that this type of fraud can never take place going forward.
Correct. Well, now that you mentioned the event with ICE, I kind of very concerned about it because I think it blew out of proportion, but I think was actually orchestrated in a way, or was convenient to make sure they escalate at that point. Because in Memphis, Tennessee, for example, is a Democrat city, right? People are very about sanctuary policies, but they decide to collaborate with ICE to target the criminals. And we saw an very coordinated effort for both sides, where they were able to bring the criminals out of the city, bring them to ICE, be deported or put in jail, whatever was the case. And now Memphis, Tennessee, without major damage or any bad event, everybody's happy, more safe city. We was expecting that the same case can be in Minneapolis.
Of course.
What do you think is happening here?
Well, I'll tell you exactly what's happening is that the Democrat Party in Minnesota has become entirely dependent upon 2 core constituencies that they cannot divorce themselves from, because if they do, they will lose.
Right.
One of those constituencies is the radical left. So these are the type of folks who show up to a No Kings rally with a hammer and sickle flag, or a Hamas flag, or, you know, an Iranian flag. They fly any flag but the United States, right? And it's ironic that they label themselves No Kings, but they're out there flying the flags of every tyrannical regime on earth that is opposed to the West. That's one of their core constituencies. Another one of their core constituencies are the subcategory of immigrants, because obviously when we talk about immigrants to Minnesota and to the United States, it's not a monolith, right? No. There's different ethnic communities, different national origins, and different values. We talked about this before, I believe, where there was immigration, the way it was set up used to attract the best of the best, because you had to have something of a frontier spirit to be willing to take yourself out of your country, out of your known world, come someplace that to you is alien, and figure out a way to navigate through it, which requires a certain degree of assimilation. It requires you to have the grit and determination to make something of yourself, because nobody's going to give you a handout. Well, that changed. Now all of a sudden we're giving all these handouts to everybody, to where in many cases you're you're better taken care of as an illegal immigrant than as a native-born United States citizen or a legal immigrant, right?
Or a legal immigrant.
So that constituency block is their second core, and they've been able to very effectively feed money to them in an implicit exchange for political loyalty. When it comes to organizing, maybe when it comes to some votes here and there, right?
100%.
And so what we see happening is as these stories have broken, and they've been breaking over the course of many years, like this is a new thing to the national stage, but it's not a new thing to us here in Minnesota. We've been hearing about this going back to like 2019. And when the Feeding Our Future thing broke in 2020, 2021. And so the reaction from Democrats has always been defensive and always been to minimize the breadth and scope of the problem, because they know that they benefit as a party from this status quo. And so now we have a situation where they have to double down, right? They have to distract and double down. And that's what this whole ICE situation is. As you note, Democrat jurisdictions in other parts of the country cooperated with federal law enforcement and did not have the problems that we had here in Minnesota and Minneapolis.
Specifically Minneapolis.
By contrast, everybody from Mayor Jacob Fry to Governor Tim Walz, from Democrats from top to bottom in this state, have taken the explicit stance that federal law enforcement, ICE in particular, Customs and Border Patrol in particular, are completely illegitimate. They're Gestapo, they're invaders, they're occupiers. I mean, the rhetoric is out of control. And they are the ones who caused these problems that we saw in Minneapolis that you did not see anywhere else. They caused it. And I find it very fascinating that they're now apparently under the impression that they're going to be able to win in 2026 by campaigning on ICE. My question is, you're in charge now. So you're saying you should remain in charge and the next time it'll be better. How? What are you going to do next time that you didn't do this time? Because the only credible answer to that is cooperate with federal law enforcement, because that's how you could have avoided it in the first place.
And I want to make sure that people know, when we say cooperating with ICE, doesn't mean we're going to take innocent people who've been here 20 years and even they probably still undocumented or illegal, that they want to throw it away. I think Trump was very specific. We want to give priority, Tom Holdman, to focus primary and the criminals. And they did, right? And they did. And I know, like, first of all, even with all the pain in my heart, if you are illegal or you are undocumented, well, you broke a law in a way, right? I do recognize that many people, a lot of the people who came, and I always say this before President Biden, most immigrants who came here come with the intention to have a better life and work for it. And I don't know if you knew this, but before Biden, any immigrant can apply or qualify for any federal help in most states. Like it's not allowed. So the first thing immigrant attorney will say to any immigrant coming to the United States, never get any federal assistance, because that will hurt you if you one day want to be a citizen. So most of these immigrants who come just to work don't grab anything. But we need to understand that under Biden, 20 million people came. So it's a big difference between immigration and mass migration, right? And most of the people who come with Biden was under welfare. They weren't criminals, people who never been vetted. We didn't know. And I know for a fact people who went in jails in other places or really mental institutions because that's expense for the government in Venezuela, Nicaragua, and other countries. And it was easier just to send them and make sure America paid the ticket.
Right. Yeah.
So I want to be fair. They obviously is good people, regardless how they get here. But these people have been probably 10, 20 years working. And I'm going to separate for the people who come and abuse the system.
Yeah. Well, and look, that's the conversation that ultimately needs to be had.
Exactly.
Is how do we deal with the outcome of these horrible policies from recent decades, where we now have potentially tens of millions of people here who are illegal. But the question is, like, on a case by case basis, how do we prioritize? And I think Tom Homan has it right.
Oh, he's good.
Yeah. Now, I will say, because I can imagine that some percentage of your audience is going to have some anecdote in their head of how they were treated or how somebody they know was treated that to their mind was unfair by ICE and CBP. Understand that Kristi Noem and Tom Homan had fundamentally different views on how to handle this situation.
Yeah.
And this is all based on reporting that's out there on
yes.
the interaction between the two of them. That Noem's approach was very much dragnet. It was just arrests. I want more and more arrests, right? Well, that in combination with the Democrats' failure to cooperate is what led to
friction.
Yes, right. And that's why Noem was moved aside and Homan was brought in, because Homan's approach is very much what you articulate, that we're not saying that if you're here illegally, you're fine.
Right.
Don't go thinking that.
Exactly. Yeah.
But what we are saying is that the priority of our operations, especially now that we've secured cooperation from state and local law enforcement under a lot of pressure that they had to be put under, that the focus is going to be on truly the worst of the worst, the hardened criminals, the people who are in jails and prisons, folks who have detainers. And this has been my argument all along, is that you can't, on the one hand, say we're not going to cooperate and we're not going to allow state and local officials to cooperate with federal law enforcement and then complain about how federal law enforcement does their job. Because
100%.
They're still tasked with doing the job,
100%.
right?
Absolutely.
So if they're going to do it without the benefit of that local institutional knowledge, that local knowledge of the community, that local insight, if you're going to cut them off from that, then yeah, I guess all they can do is stand in the street and guess who might be an illegal alien.
100%. And let me tell you, it's exactly the point I want to make today with this interview, because the fact that the Minnesota didn't want to cooperate with ICE actually hurt more the immigrants that they claim they want to protect.
Yeah.
And let me elaborate a little bit, because as you say, when you let federal agents go and try to be random who is illegal versus someone to say, okay, this is the list of the people that we know are criminals. Right. Let me bring that to you.
Right.
Let me collaborate with you. They will let the innocent people alone. Right. And they will bring no problem, easy, like the flow will be easy. Yes. And no other collateral damage. For the other side as well, when they don't cooperate, let's say they apprehend somebody, some Mexican immigrant.
Yeah.
So when things like that happen, if this person is detained in Minnesota, the Mexican consul have some help. They can advocate, they can make arrangement with the family in Mexico. They can help them to, if they have a bank account or a house, what is the next step? Somebody who can sign to take care of the kids if the kids are born in America, and help, right? Somehow to make this less damage.
Yeah.
But because they didn't, many of these people were put in Texas, where the Mexican consul have no reach to them.
Yeah.
And if they want them back, they have to pay $3,000.
Yeah.
Who have $3,000 in these times, right away? Yeah. So I want to be clear that it's exactly the point. Like, if Minnesota law enforcement will participate with ICE, what happened, those events will never happen. The bad events, the damage will never occur.
No,
it would never occur.
It would not. That's exactly right. I mean, this is a really old. It's not even a pop culture reference because it's so old. But if you think about like the Andy Griffith Show back in the day, where he plays the sheriff in town, and it's a small town, and like there's things that happen every day. Everybody knows who he is, and he knows who everybody is, right? And when the town drunk ends up going off the reservation, he throws him in the tank and lets him go the next morning, and it's just all routine. Well, if into that environment you were to introduce total strangers, right? Like the FBI or whoever in that context, who and he was barred from cooperating with them. He couldn't work with them, under some edict. He wasn't allowed to cooperate in any way. They couldn't use his facilities. They couldn't ask him questions. He wasn't allowed to work with them in any way. Then what they would be losing out on is all of that knowledge, all the knowledge that he has of what his community is, who everybody is, what their profiles are in terms of their behavior. And what that means is that instead of having a narrow focus on whoever it is that they're looking for, right? Like, let's say they're looking for some fugitive or something. Instead of having a narrow focus on that, you end up having this broad dragnet approach of, well, we got to question everybody and we got to treat everybody as a suspect and we got to, go hard on everybody until we meet our goal. That's what happened. Exactly. Is that when you don't cooperate with the people who know their community and the people who know their community are not allowed to cooperate with you, you're not going to get that narrow focused law enforcement approach that we all say we want.
Right. Yeah. You
can't have it if you don't allow cooperation.
And to be honest, it's actually the responsibility to keep the community safe. Why they wanna they should be happy. They're gonna take these criminals out of us. Let me take the criminals.
Right.
They have the ball in their court. Right. They say, okay, we can have control. Let's give them these criminals and the rest of the people will be leave it alone. And they decide not to. So some other point, what happened with immigration is, I think, also at the same token, they were inviting people to confrontate ICE police.
Yes.
Right? Like, no one, like, you can protest. Oh, calm, protest as you go with your car, you say no ICE, whatever, quietly, respectfully. But in this case, ICE were attacked, people throw things at them, they spit on them, they've been yelling, screaming, making noise, use the car, so on. It's stupid if you think the police don't want to respond for that, because first of all, they are trained.
Yeah, 100%.
They are trained to respond if they think not only their life are in danger, but if something can hurt them in a way.
Right.
Right. Yeah. So if someone put the car, I know they can break my leg or my shoulder or, where they are training to respond.
Yeah, absolutely.
And any police too.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, and this is the part that remains a sore point for me, is that to my knowledge, there's been no meaningful consequence for the folks who directly incited and financed and organized insurrectionist activities. And I don't use that word lightly or for rhetorical effect. Definitionally, objectively, this was insurrectionist activity. Insurrection is defined as subverting the lawful authority of the federal government, right? And that's exactly what Mayor Jacob Fry did. It's exactly what Governor Tim Walz did. It's exactly what General Keith Ellison did. They all actively promoted and facilitated the breaking of federal law, interference with federal law enforcement. And you can't make the cutesy argument that, well, they didn't say you should throw rocks. Well, they don't have to. A mob boss doesn't have to say, go kill Jimmy. He just has to say, I think Jimmy should take a vacation. And we all know what the implicit order is, right? Absolutely. We can use a certain degree of logic. So when you say these are occupiers, they're Nazis, they're Gestapo, it's an invader. The implication of all that is that they're completely illegitimate. They don't belong in your neighborhood, and you should be able to get rid of them by any means necessary. And that's exactly what we saw from the activists in the street.
Absolutely. And, again, I'm not trying to justify any event in any case, but the truth is the ICE agents have a lot of courage to be here because they were attacked over and over and over. And even in Minnesota, other cities like Maple Grove or other parts, they never have these issues ever.
Yeah, they tried to do something in Maple Grove, and that was stopped right quick.
Yeah,
I mean, it just goes to show you it is a choice.
it
The
is a
chaos is a choice.
was a choice.
And it's a
Minneapolis
choice that's
was a
made
choice.
by your elected and appointed officials. They choose to allow the chaos
Exactly.
or they choose to clamp down on it. Maple Grove said, no way.
Exactly. They don't allow it. You know, and the Democrats are using these events to now be the main campaign for the midterms elections.
Yeah.
And we know, you know, something that to me, I always say to the Democrats, okay, if you are saying that you are here to defend the immigrants, where was Amy Klobuchar 20 years in the Senate and have do anything?
Right.
Because there is videos she's saying that she don't like illegal immigration.
Yeah.
There is videos of her saying no, they should don't have any benefits, right? Because they are illegal. And suddenly she's best friend with the illegal immigration.
Well,
right.
That's because, like we said, this has become one of their core constituencies. This is the only way they can win. People think of Minnesota as a blue state. It's not.
It's not.
It is an artificially blue state. It is kept artificially blue by the outsized political influence of these two core constituencies, the hardcore leftist Marxists and the commercialized, industrialized illegal immigration. Those are the two core constituency groups that keep the Democrats afloat in this state. And that's why you're seeing this shift from, you're right, in the past. I mean, Bill Clinton, right? Barack Obama deported a bunch of people, right? But you've seen this shift. And the reason for the shift is not that they had some sort of moral awakening or some sort of thoughtful, rational change of mind. It's because they know that their political survival depends upon these illegitimate means.
Absolutely. And you know, when they used in the videos of the shootings and the during the ICE, you know, it makes me feel like why nobody talk about the sex trafficking. Why they don't talk about the children who've been sexually exploited or the people who've been work exploited or the women who've been raped in the border. Why they don't talk about that? And we need to know, like people need to know, even Minneapolis, we have a lot of cartel activity there. Where are these people? Why nobody's talking about it?
Yeah, well, that's a great question, right? Because we know they know about it.
Absolutely.
So everything is a choice, right? What you choose to talk about, what you choose to focus your legislative activity on or your administrative activity on. All of those things are choices and they reveal your priorities. So by the fact that they're not talking about the sex trafficking, they're not talking about the criminal cartel behavior, they're not talking about the violence in the street, it's because it's not their priority. It's because they don't care. It's because it's not politically expedient for them. And we've seen this session in the legislature too, where in areas where there is overlap between what Democrats say they want and what Republicans say they want, somehow the legislation is still not able to get passed because it seems that in their mind, anything that would enable Republicans to take any measure of credit or say, or to say this is a good thing that we support can't pass because everything has to be exclusively their thing.
Yeah.
You know, it's like a jealous child. It's like a jealous sibling who's like, it's my toy, right? We saw that recently with straw purchasing of illegal guns. So somebody who can legally purchase a firearm does so and then hands it over to somebody who legally can't possess a firearm. That's a real problem. Republicans and Democrats agree on that. Representative Peggy Scott, a Republican from up north, has had that bill since 2018 at least.
Oh, wow.
Never been passed, right?
Oh.
Last year, after the incident in Bloomington, where 3 first responders were killed, tragically, all of a sudden, Kayla Berg from down there, who's a Democrat, has a clone of that bill, right? Now she's the one carrying it. But it's different because now she's attached a poison pill onto it for so-called binary triggers, which is completely irrelevant, has nothing to do with the issue of straw purchases. And they brought that bill to Public Safety Committee recently. And I pointed out, I'm like, look, I brought an amendment. I'm like, let's get this stupid binary trigger thing off there and let's pass this. Like we all agree that we should increase penalties on straw purchasers. Nope, can't have it. Can't have it. If Republicans are going to get any amount of credit, We can't have nice things. That's their modus operandi. It's how they've been proceeding going forward.
Isn't it something? I want to expand a little bit. I want to share with you. So or probably you know this, that the Latino community specifically vote more for Trump this time. Is the people who've been here in America longer. They are immigrants who've been here longer. The children's born here, and many of the children are serving in the military. And the Latinos, when they are here for a long time, they become like entrepreneurs. They have a restaurant, they roofing business, restaurants, constructions, and these people feel very betrayed when President Biden just opened the border or brag himself over people and give documents when people been waiting to ask for the brother or the sister, and been waiting for years. Because I want to be clear with my public. I don't judge people, like people who've been here for me, let's say 10 years and back. I think the majority actually came to try, the majority, not everybody, but the majority to have a better life, right? And to work for that, to prove themselves as a good people. But I think people don't understand that what Trump is doing right now with these actions is because it's a national security issue.
100%.
It's a problem with sex trafficking, child trafficking, guns, fentanyl, cartel member infiltrating, China communists coming, so on. Can you expand a little bit about it? Because you say something the other day that I really love when you make a speech. You say, the Democrats like to say that we don't like immigrants, and it's nothing from the truth. From the truth that the Republicans love immigrants.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a couple of examples of that, right? One is well known. People might have caught the social media post where there was apparently a Japanese or Chinese man who was speaking with broken English. He was at the airport and he was in line and he saw an ICE agent. And he was just trip over himself to shake the guy's hand and tell him what a great job he was doing and say that, we support you, we love you. And that went viral and everybody loved it, right?
Yeah.
So if the deal is we don't like foreigners, we don't like immigrants, how do you explain that, right?
Exactly.
And the incident that you bring up of me saying that the idea that Republicans hate immigrants couldn't be further from the truth. That was in the context of a campaign announcement by a Hmong gentleman by the name of Paul Zhang, who is running for Congress as a Republican right here in CD4. And I was speaking directly and specifically to the Hmong community because that's a great example of a community that was brought over here as refugees, legitimate refugees, after fighting for us
100%.
in the secret war in Laos. And they came over here legally, they settled legally, and they got to work building a life in freedom. They had fought against communism, they had fought against Marxism, and they are truly loyal to the American spirit. Americans love that.
Yeah.
We love when people recognize what we have here and are excited about contributing to it. What we despise is people being brought in through this industrialized taxpayer-funded system for the purpose of disrupting and overwhelming the system. That we will not stand for. So it's not your immigration status. It's not the fact that you're an immigrant or that you're a foreigner or that you come from another country. That is not the issue that affects whether we like you or don't like you.
Exactly.
What affects whether we like you or don't like you is whether you're here to play by the rules or you're here to violate not just the rules, but to fight against the spirit of what our country stands for.
You say it perfectly. I applaud that. Yeah, it's exactly. I want the Latino community to know where the Republicans stand for. Because I hate when they try to say, they call me traitor, or Republicans are racist. It's totally the opposite. Totally the opposite. People want you to have dignity, to grow, to develop, not to come and be just someone to handle leftovers, you know?
Well, and to folks who feel that way, I would ask them a question. I would say, who do you think is more racist? The people who want you to abide by the law, and that's really their only ask,
Right.
just follow the rules, just abide by the law, otherwise we don't care. Are those the people who are racist, or is it the people who are constantly using you to elevate their own power, and in order to perpetuate that campaign mechanism, they're constantly keeping you in this status of underprivileged, right?
Exactly.
Because as long as
absolutely true.
what's the motivation for the Democrats to move you from underprivileged to privileged?
Right.
What's the motivation for them to do that? As soon as they do that, all of their nonprofits collapse, right? Their campaign messaging collapses. They have their path to power is blocked, right? Because once you actually start having to pay taxes and raise a family, and you're law abiding, and your concerns are going to shift
100%
to our concerns, right? And they can't have that. So this is all about the real racism here is the racism, what they call the bigotry of low expectations, which I think is actually an understatement. I don't think it's a bigotry of low expectations. I think it's just bigotry.
Yes.
And the same, which is historic for the Democrat Party, that they have always, to one degree or another, been interested in subjugating one group of people for their labor, for their what they produce, to benefit themselves and those who are able to prop up their own power.
Yep, exactly. Just to keep people here.
Yeah.
Is what communists do and what socialists do to you.
You see it everywhere that socialism and communism ever manifest. Absolutely.
My gosh, I can talk to you for hours. It's fascinated to listen to your videos. I really invite the people to go to your pages. Walter Hudson, right? Can you?
Yeah.
Right?
So on X, it's at Walter Hudson. On Facebook, just look up Walter Hudson for state representative. It should pop up. And then on my YouTube channel is, I believe, that Walter Hudson. You should be able to find me pretty easy.
Well, you know, I think I want to wrap it up. I know it's your time is, you are super busy and other people waiting, but I really want you to come with Jackson Purvis, I think is the last name, and other people to discuss about what the fraud and what is really happening in Minnesota. I think, unfortunately for us, the main media is so corrupt or so biased that we don't hear the whole picture. And my intention is like, please come and learn.
Yeah.
Listen to us.
Yeah. I mean, here's what I'll say about the media. It's not that they don't cover the story. It's the extent to which they cover the story.
Exactly.
Right. And it's also what they leave out of the story. You know, when we talk about, when Trump says fake news, it's been a very effective piece of rhetoric, but it's not entirely accurate, because it's not that the news you hear is fake. It's that it's lacking so much context and lacking so much focus that you're not going to get an accurate perception of what's actually happening if all you consume is mainstream media.
Exactly. So it's why I want them to listen to videos. And it's a lot of more other people who are trying to, you know, dig into it. Well, thank you so much for your time. Please, if I can invite you again, please accept it, because I think we have so much to talk. So thank you so much, everybody. Have a beautiful afternoon. Have a happy Easter. Oh, we forgot about this. Oh, sorry about it. I can talk to you forever.
I appreciate it.